Claude Code just released the /loop command. And within hours, we got people saying that it's the new 24/7 autonomous agent, but that simply isn't true. By the end of this video, you know exactly what loop can do, can't do, how we can use it in, of course, the CLI, as well as how we can use it within the desktop application as well. We're going to cover this in 3 simple parts. First of all, what is it and how does it work? Then we're going to compare it against existing ones like schedule tasks and, of course, GitHub Actions. And then last but not least, cover some use cases around when to use it and when to use the other versions instead. And if you're expecting to set this up to be an entirely autonomous AI agent in the background, that's simply not possible yet, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. And if you're building with Claude Code or any of the other AI tools, make sure to come across to the community. We've got lots and lots of content in there. We've got deep dives, especially around, for example, Claude Code. We go into lots and lots of detail, what it is and how it works, so you can get up to speed incredibly quickly. So first things first, what is Loop? Well, actually what it enables us to do is basically specify a prompt that we want to be executed at a specific point in time. Similar to like you've seen with the schedule nodes in the past, is that sort of idea, but it can run it slightly autonomously over up to 3 days at a time. What it does is it will basically take your command and then execute that prompt individually. However, one thing to note is that the tasks are scope specific, which means that they're only going to be live for that current version of Claude Code that you've got access to. If you close down the terminal or anything like that with the CLI version, it's simply not going to run. We're able to execute it with the simple /loop command, and then we can go through and express a time frame. So for example, every 5 minutes, and then the simple command that we want it to run within that time frame as well. If we come down here, they got some examples. So we could have a loop every 30 minutes to check the build that we've got within our project. Or we're going to check the build that we've got every 2 hours, or simply check the build. And by default, it will check it every 10 minutes. As you can see here, we can do that for seconds, minutes, hours, or days, but one of the big limitations of this is, of course, it's got a maximum runtime of up to basically 3 days, and then you'll need to execute that command for the loop to run again in the future. They've included some examples in here, so I'll definitely include the documentation down below so you can find it nice and easy. So first of all, how does it actually work? Well, we're going to be able to run the loop command, and then it will simply go through, create a cron job. It will execute that instruction, that prompt that we've given it at that specific point in time. We'll then, as usual, get the output that we're expecting. We'll wait until we need to run it that next time. And then we're simply going to come back and loop round and re-execute that process as many times as we need it. So every 5 minutes, 30 minutes, once a day, whatever it may be, up to, of course, that 3-day limit. So what does it actually look like within the CLI? Well, we've come through and we're going to be looking in cursor just quickly, and we've logged into our CLI. We're going to do / and then loop. And as we can see, that is the top version. We're going to do tab just to load it into the chat. And then as you can see there, we've got the interval. So we're going to do 5M for 5 minutes. So every 5 minutes is going to execute this specific prompt, of course, for the next 3 days until it expires. An example of this, and again, this isn't the best practice, as we mentioned, it's really dependent on your use case, but we could go through and say, please can you go through and get me the latest AI news? Now we'll be able to send that off, and basically every 5 minutes it's now going to execute that prompt as long as it's got the availability to do so, i.e. we're leaving this running in the background, and then we make sure that we're not closing down that terminal at any point in time. As we can see there, we've given it the command, so we've said what we want it to do, the cron, i.e. how often we want it to execute that process, the ID for that specific job, when it will auto expire, and of course we can cancel it early if we want to. We're going to say, great, that looks good. Now we'll send that off, and it should make sure that we've got all of it squared away. And of course, if we ever wanted to check what it's up to, we just need to come through and say, what scheduled tasks do we have? Then it should go through and find that reoccurring task as part of that loop that we've got set up. And as we can see there, it's found the ID again, and it's going to bring us back to it as part of a table. So if you've got lots of them set up, we'll be able to see exactly what it looks like. What it's doing is basically every second it's listening for any tasks that are due, and then it will start to basically add them to the queue and execute them. One thing to note is, of course, they only last up to 3 days at a time. After that final one, then it's going to simply delete itself so it can't be used. Now, if you're on the latest version of Claude Code, it should be automatically updated for you to use. If you don't, make sure to come through and just ask Claude Code to make sure that we've got all of this set up in the background. So making sure the Claude Code disabled cron is not set to 1, otherwise we won't be able to go through and do this. So what are some of the key limitations we need to be aware of as well? Well, first things first is closing the terminal or letting any of the sessions be cancelled or exited will cancel everything and it will all be lost. The next one is really important as well, actually, and this is one of the biggest issues for how people were thinking it can be an autonomous agent. At the moment, if a task is scheduled to be executed at a specific point in time, but your Claude terminal, your Claude instance is already busy, perhaps on a long-running request, then it will have to wait until after that process and after that command is executed before it's going to go through and run your scheduled task. So if you've got lots of different ones set up, of course, that's going to be a bottleneck for it. And then last but not least, if you're using it within the CLI, then it's going to actually clear it every time you restart the session. So when do we actually want to use loops versus anything else? Well, first of all, we need to understand the 3 different options that we've got. We've got the new loops feature. We've got the ability to schedule tasks within, of course, our Claude Code Desktop version. And if you're not sure where that is, make sure to come across to your desktop version. In the top left, you should now see that scheduled tab in the top left. Click on that and now you'll be able to come through and actually create scheduled tasks in here, just like we've had for co-work for the last couple of weeks, to go through and execute specific tasks, whatever that may be, within that time period, and of course over the next couple of days. Or last but not least, we've got the GitHub Actions as well, but that's a bit more advanced for many people. But if we look at some of the pros and cons of each, overall they can be pretty similar for different ones, but there are a few key areas that we need to go through. For example, if we're going to have a restart, we're not going to be able to restore it if we're using the loop feature versus using something like a scheduled task in a desktop app, we would be able to do. Of course, we still need to make sure that we've got our computer being on and our apps being open for the majority of those scheduled tasks or loops going through. We can have a longer time frame and duration, of course, with those scheduled tasks versus just the 3 days that we will have with loops. We can't create new sessions with the loop. That's only going to be one by one for execution, whereas of course scheduled tasks can. So with that in mind, when do we know what to use and when? Well, if it's going to be a purely GitHub based task, then you're probably looking at your GitHub Actions already. But if you're looking at actually, of course, running it locally on your machine more often, then what we're looking at is, does it actually need to be something that's going to be running for longer than 3 days at a time? For example, you may want something to go through and check your calendar at the same time every single day and give you a brief. That would be a great thing for the scheduled tasks to do, but maybe you've just shipped a new feature to do with a product, a service, whatever it may be, that we need to keep an eye on over a set period of time. That's where instead, of course, maybe it doesn't run longer than 3 days. So we just want to check every 30 minutes, half an hour, whatever it may be, are we still up and running and ready to go? And that's where we would get the loops to come through and be used. And I've just put that into a quick chart here as we can see for some example use cases. As we just mentioned, if we're monitoring and deploying maybe a specific new feature, application, whatever it may be we've deployed, then that's where of course that loop feature can be really useful. To be honest, as you go through and test a lot of these features, they're starting to blur the line between loop and scheduled and of course GitHub Actions. For many of you, unless you're actually running short-term projects, lots of changes that you need to check, adjust, whatever it may be, then loop isn't quite that autonomous offering that we are expecting at the moment. That's all for this video. Make sure to come across to the community if you're interested in learning about more AI and automation. And of course, stay tuned for the next video and have a great day.